I hope everybody had a good evening and found some good company for dinner. So I have to thank Chris Gunter from North Carolina for this lovely picture. I don't know if we're ready to summit or not, but that's what we're going to try and do this morning. I wanted to share some information from yesterday with you. So in terms of remote participation, we had 202 people logged in online yesterday, representing 6 countries: Canada, Chile, Colombia, Mexico, Peru, Trinidad and Tobago. We had 44 states represented. We had 4,100 tweet impressions, which I got schooled this morning by Connie about tweeting. So I'm not really sure exactly what that means, but it's good. So we're going to go ahead and share that. We also had the U.S., obviously, and Puerto Rico represented in the people that logged on. I think that's those announcements. Anything else? Any other big announcement that the group needs to know from somebody else? Did you double park your car in the hallway and need to move it? Anybody? Or your horse, I should say. Yeah, it was just for me. It really was just for me. So what I am tasked with doing this morning is setting the stage for the rest of what we're going to do here in our last 2 sessions. And I did want to share some pictures of some people who look utterly enthralled in our what happened yesterday. This is in Vermont. This is a group in Geneva that actually decided to get together and take a group picture. This is Arizona. That's actually Gretchen on the screen. This is one of our report out sessions from California. And these are a couple of folks from Maryland. So we do have folks joining us. There have been some real glitches with Zoom that we're trying to work through. I'm not really sure, but we appreciate everybody remote who's listening, taking the time to be with us. So I want to leave it here. When we think about what our goal is today, what I would like everybody to think about is we've been, at this point, thinking very broadly about what are the challenges we have with implementing the rule, what are the hazards on the farm, the risks to mitigate in relationship to what is in the rule, but also what's beyond the rule. And what the goal will be for today is to sort of try to start coalescing these ideas into something that is actionable and that we can move on, okay? And that is going to be a task. And so the way today is set up is we have a couple of presentations this morning to get us to our third breakout. And our third breakout is where we're going to start to do that in the groups, right? Start to try and push all this information into what could be actionable. And then after that last breakout, we're going to come together as a group and go over all of those things and see if we can actually get it to the point where we have some defined action items. Now, those action items, I'm almost hesitant to suggest what they could be because they're broad, right? Sky's the limit on this. So I don't want to stick anything in there per se at this point. I'm going to give you a moment to chime in. But I want everybody to recognize that is seriously the goal for the end of today. And even if we move the needle a little bit, that'll be where we need to be. If we move it a lot, great. I'm not sure we're going to climb up this thing today all the way to the tippy top, but I don't think that means we failed. I think if we make some progress forward, it'll be a march in the right direction, okay? With that, what I'm going to do is steal a pen, and folks, different people on my team have been saying that people have pulled them aside and told them what they would like to see happen by the end of today. So I told you what I think should happen, and I know, we've talked about it as a team, but I'm interested to know, after you guys slept on it, had dinner with people, talked about it, ruminated, what are the things you guys want to see by the end of the day? You guys spent 2 days of time. There's a lot of smart people in the room. What do you want to see by the end of today? Yep. Oh, wait.
I would like to see a concise list of recommendations to the FDA on changes to the water rule.
I'm not sure that's how you spell concise, but.
I second that motion.
Oh, should I put 2 hashtags there?
There was a lot of breakout. It's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could tell the
Pain in
voice.
the
I
ass
just
in the
didn't know
back.
where you were.
There's a lot of talk about the cost and the and stuff, and we haven't talked about how we're supposed to fund this. I think the assumption is that it's farm funded, and I'll tell you, we're not psyched about that. So, alternatives to farm funding the implementation of water testing. And I guess that could be a lot of different ways, but.
And there's a remote group that just chimed in, FDA to fund water testing studies as well.
Okay.
So I think that's a little bit different coming
Yes.
from FDA instead of farms, but research instead of on-farm testing.
We got a couple. Oh,
This thing on.
there you go.
I just want to say the FDA does fund those things. They pay me. I'm a researcher, and that's my job. So the FDA is funding research into
Okay.
this area of water testing. Research just takes time.
So maybe. No, not you. Not you. This is a new one. FDA to fund water research. So maybe it's specific research ideas. I mean, if your argument is they're already funding it, then maybe an addition should be specific research ideas.
Or maybe it's an open RFP process.
Open RFP. Okay.
You're going to pass? Okay. It's to you, Michelle's passing.
Okay, all right. So to have sort of a clear process of what variances and alternatives, or how we go about approaching variances and alternatives, and in the future, or to encourage FDA to make sure that the rule going forward has flexibility to incorporate the new science, new ideas, or new processes that people develop over time.
Would it, I don't want to put FDA on the spot, but I'm sure you guys might be able to just do this. Is everybody clear what the difference of these is, or would people like to have a description of what the difference of these is? I just want to make sure we're all on the same page when we're talking about this. Does everybody know what these are, alternatives and variances? Because I'm getting a lot of blank stares. Do you mind just trouble while we're here? sorry to keep putting you on the spot, but it seems better to answer the question than.
So real quickly, there are two areas where we built in flexibility in the rule. One was mandated by the statute, again, FSMA, the Food Safety Modernization Act, and those are the variances. And the variances could apply to one or more requirements in the regulation. You can get a variance to all of the requirements in the regulation, provided that you can show that what you're doing essentially offers the same level of public health protection as our rule, and based on local growing conditions as well. The alternatives is something that we created and we built into our rule. It was originally around both soil amendments and water. Soil amendments we're working on right now, so now it really only applies to water. And it specifically applies to two requirement areas, if you will, in the agricultural water section. The one area is the sampling frequency, and the other area is the indicator organism. And again, it's intended to take into account emerging science and any new information that can, again, show that an alternative approach meets the same level of public health protection as what our standard offers. And I would say that one thing that we've said over and over again is that although backing up, the variance process involves a petition process where the state would have to petition FDA. The alternative approach is an approach where a farmer could have a study in hand to show that there's that same level of public health protection around those areas that I just described. We have heard concerns about, well, how do we know if this study is adequate? If FDA comes out and they determine it's not adequate and we're doing something wrong, we're going to get, cited or whatever. We understand that, and so, I mean, one thought that we had was as we become aware of studies that support alternative approaches, that information could build into guidances that could benefit more than just a single farmer or a group of farmers, but more farmers around that area. So you have multiple growers that could take advantage of a single study or a group of studies that are done. There's a question in the back of the room.
Hey, Samir, so how would that work with the alternatives? I have two questions on alternatives. One, you guys have gathered most of the research. So if I was likely to pull some research, it may be something you already reviewed and rejected as being sound. And then secondly, with the states individually implementing the rule, what's the process? I mean, how do you envision that process to work?
So, and that's something that we are working with the states on. Of course, there's a big question mark now, I'd say, across the board with respect to soil amendments and water. So we'll have to wait to see what we end up with in terms of an approach to water. That's why we're here. So we haven't specifically laid out an approach yet as to how that would work, but presumably, it would be a cooperative relationship where, we would be working with the states that will be doing the primary contacts for the implementation aspect. They'll be doing the inspections for most of the states, and so we would need to set up some kind of cooperative model to make sure that we're all on the same page as to whether an operation or a group of operations achieved an alternative approach or is supported by an alternative approach.
many comments being sent in from the South, probably not surprising to anyone. The first one, Samir, related to what you just
Wait.
said is,
Wait, is it for Samir or is
It's-
it back to this board?
yes, both.
Oh, okay.
All.
Then stand there, Samir. Thank you.
This first one is I think for Samir, based on what you just said about alternatives and variances. There's concern that we still don't know what the level of public health protection provided by the current micro criteria are. So there's concern that we have no way to evaluate potential alternatives or variances.
We recognize those concerns, and there is science, public health rationale in the rule. It was discussed yesterday a couple times. We gave a presentation about it, and we heard from Jeff, right, about the support as well and the work that's being done. So those could be anchors for future work around what same level of public health protection means. We put out the guidance, and it is a guidance that's open for comment right now. And we are open to ideas about how to, make that determination. And it's not something that we necessarily need to make. It could be something that, we leave it open to allowing an operation or academia to create that same level of public health protection. And we would, there are models that can be followed in that regard where we could be part of that process, but we don't necessarily need to drive that process. There's a lot of flexibility as to how to get that target, which is, I think, what everybody's looking for and asking about. Obviously, we're not working towards that right now because, again, there are question marks about where we're going to land. But I'm just putting out a potential model for moving forward. Should we arrive at a standard, at criteria, and we need to develop assess the same level of public health protection, how could that be done? What would FDA's role be in it? We would prefer that it would be, more of a, we would be involved, but it could be driven by the community as well. So.
I'm not done, but I'm almost done. I have one more comment for you, Betsy, and this is related to the comment, well, FDA is funding research. Fantastic. We don't, as a community, know about it.
Okay,
right?
we could, yeah.
And that's not so much for you as it is, the comment was made, well, FDA is funding research, they're paying my salary. Cool. What are you doing? And how does it apply to, the comment, we don't know what's going on. We don't know if it's going on in our region. We don't know if it's applicable to our water sources and what we're doing.
Right.
And so just some more transparency on what that might look like.
That's a very fair point, and we can definitely do a better job of really promoting the work that we're doing with our Western Center for Food Safety. And it has to do with some of the concepts that were discussed yesterday. We heard a lot of discussion about cooperative monitoring, and where a farmer could potentially utilize, again, I'll try to put it in simple terms, where if there are 4 farmers, farmer A, farmer B, farmer C, farmer D, farmer E, sampling done by farmer A could satisfy the requirements for farmer B, C, D, and E. So basically collecting representative samples from a single body of water that could satisfy, common purposes, basically, or common goals. So that work is being done, and I'm sure Missy, like she was kind of hinting, she would be more than happy to talk about it at any time during this symposium, or summit. But we could do it outside of this summit as well.
Yeah, and I think what they're getting at is,
Yeah.
and I know Dave was sitting here. FDA also has a group that's doing soil research, and I think that was one of the things that came out at the Soil Summit. Was one of the primary focuses was to let people know what you were collecting, what you were finding out. So I think there is a big interest in that in both areas.
All right.
Okay.
Hello,
I'd like to see
Samir.
Oh, wait, we got one over here first. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to see us include a focus on sanitary survey, risk assessment or assessment of risk as part of as part of the rule, where the testing just becomes a verification of the controls you have in place of your water food safety management system.
Samir, this is directed at FDA. You talked about states having the ability to petition. Nowhere in FSMA are the words tribal, indigenous,
Actually,
located.
I'm sorry, I should have been more specific about the variances and how the petition process would work. It would be the state's foreign government, competent authority that could, and tribal authorities as well. That is written in the rule. That's written in the rule. I don't think it's specifically called out in the law, but it is written in our produce safety rule.
Okay, and then the other thing is that tribes have not been given any funding for enforcement, and we have rights that predate the Constitution and the formation of the United States of America. So our rights need to be recognized in the enforcement capacity, and tribes have dealt with this prior with FDA in tobacco inspection and also with the EPA and water inspection. So we're just hoping that tribes will be included in inspection funding as well and notifications regarding inspection, because that could cause issues with states.
Okay, so I got that as tribal nations need enforcement funds, inspection notification. And just to go back to the gentleman before you, I put sanitary surveys or other practices being acceptable for controlling risks. Is that, I'm not sure I captured your point, which is why I'm asking. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay. Yeah, the point was, if you think back to meat and poultry and HACCP in the 1990s, the government didn't legislate finished product testing and send people out on their own to figure out how to get to that result, right? HACCP became required. And then how people verified that, there are different ways to do that. Here, we're sort of legislating a finished product testing, if you will, same sort of scenario, without really providing the assessment of risk tools or a framework around that. That's what I'm saying. You know, having a water food safety management plan of which a sanitary survey would be a part of, and then having the testing as verification of what you're doing in your water food safety management plan.
Okay, tools for assessing risks on the farm, such as sanitary surveys, is that more in line? I'm not sure I'm really capturing what you're saying.
I'll email you.
Okay.
How's that?
That's fine, I just kind of wanted it on the list. Okay.
So at the risk of trying to float a lead balloon, an outcome that I would really like to see would be commitment from the regulated community and affiliated stakeholders to develop a roadmap or commitment to develop a roadmap to help FDA, give them the tools, the data, et cetera, to step away from a hard quantitative approach to ag water and move to a semi-quantitative to reduce the burden of cost, accessibility, and a variety of other, I think, benefits.
So less quantitative? Say that again. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the point is to develop a test, or that could become part of an alternative approach to use, you know, a semi-quantitative approach based on the available data as it relates to, you know, public health and accomplish those goals, but greatly reduce the cost, greatly stimulate basically a rural cottage industry, particularly among certified crop consultants and others, or enterprising farmer or farmers. I mean, it would facilitate a lot and I think accomplish the goals.
I think this one and that one are oddly linked somehow. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so I want to first emphasize that we also second the transparency on what research is being, what's underway right now. Second, interested in more regional studies specifically regional. Yesterday, as an example, regional die-off was mentioned, but others as well, regionally specific studies. And then the last one is perhaps a communication plan or some way of moving forward with distilling down the science behind water recommendations into a farmer-friendly version. And it doesn't necessarily have to be from the FDA. Maybe it could be something that is tasked to Extension or some other group, but a plan for a communication of that more difficult language and comprehension down to a simple farmer-friendly version, layperson-friendly.
Okay.
All right, so another one from it's just me again. A desire for FDA to tackle the low-hanging fruit that's left for them to still be able to fix in this rule. Things like, I think we heard yesterday from someone, the presence absence test for those standards where the standard is absence of E. coli. And then some sort of a path forward around how quickly you have to respond to risk assessment results. You don't do a risk assessment and then react to it a year after you get the results.
So, Michelle, maybe as an outcome, it's better to say a list of things we think FDA can address in the short run.
Yes, that's probably a better, sorry.
No, I'm just trying to,
Yeah.
I'm trying to turn it into actionable items. List of things.
And there were a lot of amen Trevors that came through to me as well. So.
And so, Michelle, in the short term, one was the presence absence water test. What was the other one?
The other one I don't think is a quick one. It was
Okay, never mind then.
it was the speed of reacting to water results, right? The way you do it now, it's seasonally. And
Okay.
so you don't respond to those immediate test results as
I
they
think
come
that's
in.
I don't think
That-
that's a
that
short
is not
term.
a short-term
I was just going to
fix.
say, I don't think that's a short term. I don't know where I'll put it over here. Okay.
Got our next one over here.
Yep.
This is kind of along a little bit, I think, what Trevor said, but encouraging producers to make contact with their commodity representation groups. For example, I know like with LGMA, the standards are relatively aligned with what the FDA requests, but as you look regionally and nationally at your commodity representation group, pressure them to help you come up with what they think the best practices might be. Potentially, they might have a good line in to speak with someone at the FDA or have someone at Extension, and I know we can't read minds there, but as a producer, I think put some pressure on those groups to really assist you, because that's what they're there for.
And I think this actually came up, again, trying to turn these into actionable items. This came up yesterday, I believe, with Bob, when he was suggesting commodity groups could come up with those alternatives, and that was the discussion about with the science that says a specific commodity. So yeah, that's a theme we've heard from yesterday as well. Anything else? Okay, well, that's good. So it's a nice short list. Well, what I'd actually like to do, depending on how much time I do have a few minutes. Okay, so the thing, and just to bring it back to what we're supposed to be focusing on here, because I really do want to have stuff at the end of the day, as I think we all do. Some of these things I think can be tackled today. or at least attempted to be tackled today. The short list of things that we think FDA could turn around in the short run. We can at least give them that list. Whether they can turn it around in the short run, who knows? But we could create a list like that. Encouraging them, the communication with FDA about the value of transparency of the research they're funding, stuff like that. I think some of these, some of these are a little bit bigger, and I would like you all throughout the day to sort of wrap your head around it to see if we can turn them into actionable items. List of research that we need, regionally specific research that we need. I think we can work on that. I think the groups that are remote can work on that. So I think that's something we can make progress on today. So what I would encourage you to do, and again, I want to point out from the end of yesterday where people did, a brain dump of what they were thinking about, key areas that need research. We did that last night. It came up again this morning. Define acceptable risk for produce. That came out yesterday. It came up again this morning. So some of these are sort of reoccurring themes, and I do think we'll have a good opportunity today to make headway on them. So I appreciate everybody chiming in to share what they would like to see, because I think it'll give us a focus moving forward. All right? I'm going to give everybody one last chance, and then we're just going to move to our first speaker. Oh, Kate Woods is going to take that chance.
So Betsy, this is an attempt to take some of the comments that have already been made and see if we can come up with a clear goal for today, and kind of deals with flexibility and what we've talked about on alternatives and the ability to kind of conduct risk assessments on a farm basis. And I'd like to see us come out today with some clear recommendations for FDA on what it is appropriate to have in the actual rule language versus what should be incorporated into guidance to ensure that there actually is that flexibility to respond to new and ongoing research as it becomes available, as well as commodity and farm-specific information.
We can certainly offer that up, but we all know that reopening the rule is a can of worms that may or may not happen. Did I say that politically enough? But absolutely, things are on the table. Ostroff, I'm cutting in and out now. Ostroff did say all things are on the table, including opening up the rule. That was definitely said yesterday. So I think this is something we definitely can do. I just think in the short and long term, it's good to have things that we can work on